Commander Sarah Chen stared at the communications display with growing concern. The signal coming through was broken, fragmented like shattered glass. Static filled most of it, but between the crackling noise she could hear something that made her blood run cold. Screaming. Someone was screaming in the background of what should have been a routine distress call. Clean it up, she ordered her communications officer. Get me something I can understand. The young officer's fingers flew across his console. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked. After 2 minutes that felt like hours, a voice emerged from the chaos. It was speaking Keltar, the melodic language of one of Earth's closest alien allies. Sarah had learned enough of it to understand the words that came through. They came from nowhere. No warning, no demands. They just started firing. The cities are burning. Everyone is dead or dying. Please, someone help us, please. Then silence. The transmission cut off completely. Sarah felt her stomach twist. The Keltar were peaceful. They made art and music. They traded stories and spices with human colonies. They had no military to speak of, just a few patrol ships to watch for asteroids. The idea of someone attacking them seemed impossible, like hearing that someone had bombed a library full of children. Set course for Varus 7, Sarah commanded. Maximum speed. And send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a potential massacre situation. The Vigilant was a patrol ship, designed for surveys and showing the flag in remote systems. She carried a crew of 80 and enough weapons to discourage pirates. She was not built for war, but Sarah had taken an oath when she joined the United Earth Space Navy, and that oath did not have exceptions for convenience. The journey to Varus 7 took 6 hours. 6 hours of silence on the bridge. 6 hours of checking and rechecking their weapons systems. 6 hours of hoping they would arrive to find a false alarm, a misunderstanding. Anything but what Sarah feared they would find. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Varus 7 system, Sarah knew immediately that her hopes were meaningless. The orbital stations were gone, not damaged, not disabled. Gone. Where 3 trading stations and 2 construction platforms should have been, there was only debris. Twisted metal spinning in the darkness. The wreckage was still warm enough to show up on thermal scans, which meant the attack had happened recently. Within the last day, maybe less. Scanning the planet's surface, the sensor officer reported. Her voice shook. Commander, I'm detecting massive thermal signatures. Atmospheric contamination is off the scale, and I'm not picking up any communications traffic. None at all. A planet with 8 million inhabitants should have been buzzing with signals. Comm traffic, entertainment broadcasts, navigation beacons, emergency services, all the electronic chatter of a living civilization. Silence from a populated world meant only one thing. Take us in, Sarah said quietly. Carefully. Whatever did this might still be here. The Vigilant descended toward Varus 7 under silent running conditions, every sensor straining to detect threats. But there was nothing. The attackers were gone, their work complete. The main city of Varus 7 had been called Singing Waters. The Keltar had built it around a series of waterfalls with towers that chimed in the wind and gardens on every rooftop. Sarah had visited it once 3 years ago for a cultural exchange. She remembered the beauty of it, the way the Keltar children had been fascinated by her stories of Earth. Singing Waters was ash now. The towers had melted into slag. The gardens were burned to the bedrock. The waterfalls still fell, but they fell over broken stone into pools choked with debris. And there were bodies. Thousands of them, tens of thousands lying in the streets where they had fallen. Sarah forced herself to keep breathing, forced herself to keep thinking. Grief and rage would have to wait. Right now she had a job to do. Deploy landing teams, she ordered. Full hazard gear. Look for survivors. Document everything. And someone find me whoever did this. The landing teams spread out across 3 cities. They found the same thing everywhere. Orbital bombardment had destroyed most of the urban centers. Ground forces had come after, moving through the ruins with systematic brutality. The Keltar, who had survived the initial attack, had been hunted down and killed. No prisoners, no mercy, just extermination. In the ruins of the southern city of Crystal Harbor, they found survivors. 2,000 Keltar huddled in underground shelters, starving and traumatized. When the human Marines appeared, some of the Keltar thought they were the attackers returning to finish the job. Others recognized the Earth insignia and broke down weeping with relief. A Keltar elder named Melos told Sarah what had happened. He spoke in broken English, his translator device damaged. His words came slowly, painfully, like pulling shrapnel from a wound. They called themselves Vratheon, Mello said. We had never heard of them. They appeared in orbit 3 days ago. Many ships. We tried to communicate, to welcome them. They did not answer. They just started shooting. He paused, his large eyes distant with memory. The bombardment lasted for hours. When it stopped, we thought maybe it was over. Maybe they would leave. But then they landed. Thousands of soldiers in black armor. They went building to building. They killed everyone they found. Old, young, it did not matter. We asked them why. They said we were contaminating their territory. They said species like us had no right to exist. They said they were cleansing the world for the ascendancy. Sarah recorded every word. Her hands clenched into fists, but she kept her voice steady. How many of them were there? What kind of ships? I do not know about ships, Mello said. But there were many. And they were not afraid. They acted like this was normal. Like this was just work they were doing. One of their officers, he said they had done this to 16 other species. He laughed about it. 16 other species. Entire civilizations wiped out like dirt swept from a floor. Sarah felt something cold and hard settling in her chest. Something that felt like iron and tasted like rage. The Vigilant spent 2 days on Varus 7. They rescued every survivor they could find. They documented the massacre in excruciating detail, taking thousands of hours of video and sensor readings. They collected testimony from survivors. They examined the weapon signatures left behind by the Vratheon. When they finally lifted off, the Vigilant carried 2,000 refugees and enough evidence to prove genocide beyond any doubt. Sarah stood on the bridge and watched Varus 7 shrink behind them. Somewhere down there, 8 million Keltar lay dead. 8 million artists and teachers and children and farmers and musicians. All gone because some empire she had never heard of decided they were in the way. Sarah had joined the Space Navy because she believed in protecting people. She had never expected to feel this burning need for justice that felt almost like violence itself. But as she transmitted her full report to Earth Command, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Vratheon had made a mistake. They had massacred the friends of humanity, thinking no one would answer. They were wrong. Someone would answer. Sarah would make sure of it. Earth would answer with fire and steel. The chamber in Geneva was silent as the footage played. 200 council members from every nation on Earth watched screens that showed the ruins of Singing Waters. They watched recorded testimony from Keltar survivors. They watched reconstruction videos that showed how the attack had unfolded, step by methodical step. Ambassador Liu Chen sat in the front row with his hands folded tightly in his lap. He had seen the footage 6 times already in private briefings. It did not get easier. Behind him, he could hear other delegates breathing too fast, fighting tears or nausea or rage. When the final image appeared, a Keltar child's toy lying in ash, someone in the back row made a choked sound. The lights came up. President Adeyemi of the United Earth Council stood at the podium. She was a woman in her 70s who had lived through the last great wars of the 21st century. Back when humanity had nearly destroyed itself, her face looked carved from stone. You have seen what we have seen, she said. Her voice carried clearly in the hushed chamber. Our friends, our allies, our trading partners have been murdered. 8 million innocent lives extinguished in 3 days. The perpetrators are a species called the Vratheon Ascendancy. According to our intelligence, this is not an isolated incident. This is their policy. She touched a control and new images appeared. Star charts with markers, names of species that no longer existed, dates of extinction events going back 300 years. 17 species before the Keltar. President Adeyemi continued. All of them peaceful. All of them weak by galactic standards. All of them destroyed completely. The Vratheon have turned genocide into an industrial process. They find a species with something they want. They eliminate that species. They take what they want. They move on. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions, demands, proposals. President Adeyemi let them talk for a moment, then raised her hand for silence. We have already reached out to the Galactic Union. We have asked for intervention, for justice, for protection of potential future victims. The Union has expressed sympathy. They have offered to form a committee to study the issue. They have suggested that sanctions might be considered in 5 to 10 years. The disgust in her voice was plain. Ambassador Liu understood it completely. The Galactic Union was old, cautious, obsessed with procedures and protocols. To them, the extinction of a species was regrettable but not urgent. Not worth risking a war over. The Vratheon field over 1,000 warships, President Adeyemi said. They have never lost a war. The Union fears them. Every species in the galaxy fears them except us. We are too young to know better, perhaps. Or perhaps we remember our own history too well. She paused, looking around the chamber at faces from every continent, every culture, every human tradition. We nearly destroyed ourselves a century ago. We fought wars that killed billions. We poisoned our own planet. We stood on the edge of extinction and looked into the abyss, and we made a choice. We chose to live. We chose to be better. We promised ourselves that we would never allow such horrors again. Her voice grew harder, stronger. That promise does not end at our borders. We did not crawl back from the edge of extinction just to sit quietly while others commit the crimes we rejected. The Keltar trusted us. They called us friends. We failed to protect them. We will not fail to avenge them. The vote was called. The resolution was simple. The United Earth Council authorized military action against the Vratheon ascendancy to punish genocide and prevent future atrocities. 200 delegates voted. Not a single vote of opposition. Not one abstention. Unanimous. As the chamber emptied, Ambassador Liu found himself approached by an elderly alien. The creature was a Trevallion, a species that resembled a cross between a tree and a spider, with bark-like skin and multiple limbs. This particular Trevallion was Keeper Solus, the longest-serving diplomat in the Galactic Union. You have made your choice, Keeper Solus said. His translator rendered his speech in calm, measured tones. I must tell you, as someone who has witnessed 6 centuries of galactic politics, that this choice is suicide. Then we will die, Liu said simply. But we will die doing the right thing. The Vratheon have destroyed species far more powerful than yours, Solus continued. They have weapons you have never seen, tactics perfected over millennia of conquest. What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed? Liu considered the question seriously. He looked at the image still displayed on the main screen, the ruins of a city that had once sung with beauty. Because we are angry, he said finally. And because we have been to the edge already. The Vratheon think they can intimidate us with the threat of extinction. We have already survived our own extinction. We know what we are capable of, the good and the terrible. They are about to learn what happens when you murder the friends of humanity. Keeper Solus was quiet for a long moment. Then very softly he said, I will remember this conversation. If you somehow survive, I will remember that Earth chose to stand when the entire galaxy chose to kneel. That may matter more than you know. Far from Geneva, across human space, the word spread. The videos from Vera 7 were broadcast on every channel. Within hours, everyone knew. Everyone saw. And humanity responded with a speed that shocked the Galactic Union. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Young people lined up by the thousands to enlist. The waiting lists for military academies stretched for miles. Retired veterans requested reinstatement. Even old soldiers from the final wars of the 21st century, men and women in their 90s and 100s, showed up demanding to serve. Admiral James Okoro watched the flood of volunteers from his office in the Naval Command Center. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars from the Martian border conflicts. He had spent his career preparing for threats that might never come. Now the threat was here, and it was worse than anything he had imagined. Production reports, he said to his aide. The numbers scrolled across his display. Every shipyard in the solar system was working at maximum capacity. Mars was churning out warships at a pace not seen since the last Great War. Europa's factories were producing ammunition around the clock. The asteroid belt facilities were building weapons platforms. Earth's industrial capacity, vast and mostly idle during the peaceful years, was waking up like a sleeping giant. But would it be enough? The Vratheon had 1,000 ships and 300 years of experience. Humanity had enthusiasm and rage. Okoro hoped that would be sufficient. He knew it might not be. His aide interrupted his thoughts. Sir, you have a call from the council. President Adeyemi wants to know when the fleet will be ready. Okoro looked at the deployment schedules, ships being rushed through final testing, crews training in simulators because there was no time for real exercises, weapon systems being installed by workers who barely slept. It was chaos, but it was purposeful chaos driven by a fury that would not be denied. Tell the president 6 weeks, Okoro said. In 6 weeks we sail for Vratheon space. And God help them because we won't. Across human civilization, the message was the same. The Vratheon had expected their massacre to be ignored, like all the others. They had assumed humanity would do what every other species did: submit, accept, move on. They were wrong. Humanity was awake. Humanity was angry. And humanity was coming. Admiral James Okoro stood on the bridge of the ECS Indomitable and watched the fleet assemble. 180 warships, the largest force humanity had ever gathered in one place. Carriers and battleships, cruisers and destroyers, support vessels and troop transports. Every ship was crewed by volunteers who had begged for the chance to serve. Every ship carried weapons designed specifically to kill the Vratheon. "Fleet reports ready, Admiral," his executive officer said. Okoro nodded. Before them lay Karox Station, a Vratheon military outpost on the border of what they considered their territory. Intelligence said the station held supplies for frontier operations. Intelligence also said it was defended by 350 Vratheon warships. The odds were bad. Okoro did not care about the odds. "Open a channel to the fleet," he ordered. When the channel opened, he spoke simply. "We are here because 8 million Keltar died for no reason other than someone else's greed. We are here because genocide cannot be allowed to stand. The Vratheon think we are weak. They think we will run. Show them how wrong they are. All ships advance." The human fleet surged forward. Engines that had been designed for exploration and trade now drove them toward battle. Okoro felt the tension on the bridge, saw his crew checking their stations one final time. Many of them were young, too young to remember the last great wars, but they had trained hard. They were ready. The Vratheon detected the human fleet when they were still an hour away. Long-range sensors picked up activity at Karox Station. Ships moving into formation, weapons powering up. The Vratheon were confident, Okoro knew. Why wouldn't they be? They had never lost. 30 minutes from contact, a transmission came through. A Vratheon commander appeared on the screen. The Vratheon looked like someone had taken a crocodile, made it walk upright and given it technological intelligence. "Scales and sharp teeth and cold eyes. Human vessels," the Vratheon commander said. His translator gave his words a mocking tone. "You have entered ascendancy space without permission. Turn back now or be destroyed. We have faced greater threats than soft prey species playing at war." Okoro felt a cold smile touch his lips. "This is Admiral Okoro of the United Earth Space Navy. We are here to make you pay for the Keltar. And we are not playing." He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "All ships free to engage. Show them what humans do to murderers." The battle began at extreme range. The Vratheon opened fire first, massive energy beams that could vaporize a city. But human ships were smaller, faster, more maneuverable than the Vratheon expected. They scattered, spreading out in patterns that looked random but were carefully calculated. The Vratheon beams missed more often than they hit. Then humanity fired back. Railguns, weapons the Vratheon had never encountered, launched metal projectiles at terrifying speeds. The Vratheon shields, designed to stop energy weapons, barely slowed the physical rounds. Ships shuddered as railgun slugs punched through their hulls. Explosions bloomed in the darkness. Nuclear-pumped plasma lances, another human innovation, followed. Beams of star-hot plasma burned through Vratheon armor. Ships broke apart, spinning off into space as atmosphere vented and systems failed. And then came the drones. Thousands of them, small automated craft that swarmed the Vratheon formation like angry insects. Each drone carried a single explosive charge and rudimentary artificial intelligence. They were cheap to make and devastating in numbers. The Vratheon point defense tried to stop them, but there were too many. Drones slammed into ships, detonating against engines and weapon ports and bridge sections. The Vratheon formation wavered. They had expected a traditional battle, fleet against fleet, the kind of fight they had won 1,000 times. Instead, they were facing chaos. Human ships darted in and out of weapons range. Drones obscured their sensors. Electronic warfare systems jammed their communications and fed false targeting data to their computers. Okoro watched the tactical display and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had spent a century developing these weapons in case they were ever needed. The Vratheon were discovering that humans did not fight fair. They fought to win. "Captain Reeves reports her assault group is ready," the communications officer said. Okoro had been waiting for this. "Tell her she's cleared for boarding action." Captain Maria Reeves commanded a group of fast frigates loaded with Marines in powered armor. While the main battle raged, her ships had worked around to the flank of the Vratheon formation. Now they accelerated toward the Vratheon flagship, a dreadnought called Worldbreaker that massed 10 times what any human ship did. The frigates took fire. One exploded, torn apart by a Vratheon beam. Another lost half its hull to a missile strike. But the remaining ships reached the Worldbreaker and clamped onto its hull like ticks on a dog. Cutting torches began burning through armor. Reeves led her Marines into the Vratheon ship. They fought deck by deck, corridor by corridor. Powered armor gave them strength and protection. Advanced weapons gave them firepower. But what really mattered was training and determination. The Vratheon were used to fighting weaker species. The Marines were used to training against each other, against opponents who adapted and learned and refused to give up. The fighting was brutal. Close quarters combat in the corridors of an alien ship. Vratheon soldiers were tough, strong, well-armed. But Marines had something the Vratheon did not expect. They had something to fight for. Every Marine had seen the videos from Varus 7. Every Marine knew what the Vratheon had done. They did not fight for conquest or territory. They fought for justice. Reeves personally led the assault on the Worldbreaker's bridge. Her squad blew open the armored door with breaching charges and stormed through. The Vratheon commander stood at his command station, ordering his crew to repel the boarders. When he saw Reeves, he reached for a weapon. Reeves shot him first. Not to kill, but to wound. He fell, clutching his leg, and Reeves stood over him. "You wanted to see soft prey species playing at war," she said. "How do we look now?" She left him for her troops to secure and moved on to take the ship's engineering section. The battle for Karox station lasted 8 hours. When it ended, 2/3 of the Vratheon fleet was destroyed or captured. The station itself was a burning wreck. The human fleet had taken losses, 20 ships destroyed and 40 more damaged, but they had won. Decisively. Completely. Okoro stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the wreckage. He felt no joy in the victory. Too many good people had died today, but he felt satisfaction. The Vratheon had learned a lesson. Humanity could fight. Humanity could win. "Send a message to the Vratheon Ascendancy," he ordered. "Priority transmission. I want their leaders to hear this." When the channel opened, Okoro spoke to the entire Vratheon Empire. "You came to Varus 7 with fire and steel. You thought no one would answer. You were wrong. We are humanity. We have seen what you did to our friends. We have seen your crimes. And we will not stop until you pay for every life you took. You wanted to see what happens when you murder innocents. Now you know. We are coming for you, all of you." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships set course for the next Vratheon system. We are not done, not even close." Behind them, Karox station burned. Ahead of them, the Vratheon Ascendancy waited, no longer so confident. For the first time in 300 years, they were the ones who were afraid. Humanity had shown them fire and steel, and humanity was just getting started. 2 years of war changed everything. Lieutenant Amanda Chen, daughter of the commander who had discovered the Varus 7 massacre, crouched behind a broken wall and tried to catch her breath. Around her, the sounds of battle echoed through the ruins of what had once been a Vratheon labor camp. Plasma fire lit up the darkness. Explosions shook the ground. Screams filled the air, some human, some alien. "How many more buildings?" she asked her sergeant, a man named Torres who had fought in 3 major battles before this one. "2 more, Lieutenant," Torres replied. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, but he ignored it. "Intelligence says they have prisoners in both." Amanda nodded and checked her weapon. Her unit was a mixed force, humans and Keltar survivors fighting together. After Varus 7, many Keltar had joined the human military, learning to fight, learning to hate. Amanda understood that hate. She had grown up hearing her mother's stories about the discovery. She had joined the Navy on her 18th birthday. "Move out," she ordered. "Stay sharp. The Vratheon know we are here." The war had spread across a dozen systems. Admiral Okoro's initial victories had shocked the Vratheon, but they had adapted. They had pulled back their frontier forces and concentrated their strength. They had started using tactics that humanity found abhorrent, targeting civilian centers, taking hostages, committing fresh atrocities to try to break human will. It had not worked. Every atrocity made humanity fight harder, but the cost was terrible. Earth had lost entire fleets. Colonies had been bombarded. Millions of humans were dead. The casualty list grew longer every day. Some people on Earth were starting to ask if the price was too high, if maybe the Keltar were not worth this level of sacrifice. Amanda thought about those questions sometimes in the quiet moments between battles. Then she would remember the videos from Vera 7, the bodies in the streets, the children who had died for no reason. And she knew the answer. Some things were worth fighting for. Some evils could not be allowed to stand. Her unit reached the first building. It was a squat structure made of metal and concrete, the kind of place the Vratheon used to house slaves. Intelligence said there were 300 prisoners inside, mostly from a species called the Drell who the Vratheon had conquered 20 years ago. Breach charges ready, Torres reported. Amanda gave the signal. The charges detonated, blowing the door inward. Her unit rushed inside, weapons ready. What they found made her stomach turn. The prisoners were chained to the walls. They were emaciated, beaten, broken. Some were dead, left to rot where they had collapsed. Others looked at the arriving soldiers with eyes that held no hope, as if rescue was just another form of torture. Get them out, Amanda ordered. Medical teams now. Torres, secure the perimeter. While her troops worked, Amanda moved deeper into the building. She found the guards' quarters, the offices where the Vratheon had kept records, files that documented how many prisoners had arrived, how many had been worked to death, how many had been executed for failing to meet quotas. The Vratheon kept detailed records of their crimes as if they were proud of their efficiency. Amanda copied everything to her datapad, evidence for the trials that would come if humanity won, when humanity won. She had to believe that. The second building was harder. The Vratheon had prepared a defense. They opened fire as soon as Amanda's unit approached. 2 of her soldiers went down in the first seconds, both Keltar, both dead before they hit the ground. Amanda felt rage surge through her, but she forced it down. Anger made you stupid. She needed to think. Suppressing fire, she ordered. Get the heavy weapons up front. We are going through that wall. The battle for the second building took an hour. It was close quarters, brutal combat. Amanda lost 6 more soldiers, including Torres, who died protecting a group of freed prisoners. When it was finally over, Amanda stood in the wreckage and wanted to scream. Wanted to cry. Wanted to quit. But there were 400 prisoners freed. 400 beings who would have died in slavery if not for her unit's actions. That had to mean something. That had to be worth the cost. Far from the fighting, in the orbital space above Earth, Admiral Okoro sat in a strategy meeting with his staff. The holographic display showed the current state of the war. Human forces had pushed deep into Vratheon territory, liberating labor camps and destroying military installations. But the Vratheon were pushing back hard. They are targeting our supply lines, his logistics officer reported. We have lost 3 convoys this week. They are also hitting civilian targets. The attack on New Mumbai killed 50,000 people. Okoro closed his eyes briefly. New Mumbai, one of Earth's largest orbital cities. The Vratheon had sent a fleet specifically to destroy it, to break human morale. The defense fleet had stopped them, but barely. The cost had been horrific. What is our current fleet strength? Okoro asked. 112 capital ships operational. Another 30 under repair. Production is ongoing, but we are losing ships faster than we can build them. The numbers were not good. The Vratheon still fielded 700 warships, and they were learning to fight human tactics. The early victories had come because the Vratheon were unprepared. Now they were prepared. Now every battle was harder than the last. Okoro looked at the strategic map. The Vratheon homeworld, Vratheon Prime, sat at the center of their empire. It was heavily defended, considered impregnable. But Okoro was beginning to think it was the only target that mattered. The Vratheon would never surrender as long as their homeworld was safe. They would keep fighting, keep killing, keep committing atrocities. We need to strike at Vratheon Prime, Okoro said. His staff stared at him. One of them, a younger admiral named Hassan, spoke up. Sir, that is suicide. They have 200 ships defending that system. Orbital fortresses. Planetary shields. We would never make it through. We would if we committed everything, Okoro replied. Every ship we have. One massive assault. Hit them so hard they cannot recover. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was proposing. It would leave Earth defenseless. If the assault failed, the Vratheon would have a clear path to Sol system. Humanity would be finished. It is the only way to end this, Okoro continued. We cannot win a war of attrition. We do not have the numbers, but we have something they do not. We have people who refuse to give up. We have soldiers who know what they are fighting for. That has to count for something. Before anyone could respond, a message came through. Priority transmission from the Galactic Union. Okoro opened it, expecting more meaningless diplomatic language. Instead, he found a message from Keeper Solus, the ancient Trevelyan diplomat, Admiral Okoro. I am not authorized to send this message. If discovered, it will end my career. But I must tell you that there are others in the galaxy who have been watching your war. We see what you are fighting for. We see that you do not massacre civilians. We see that you free slaves rather than take them. Some of us have begun to question why we allow the Vratheon to exist at all. We cannot join you openly, but some supplies may find their way to your forces. Some intelligence may be shared. You are not as alone as you think. Give them fire and steel, Admiral. Show the galaxy what justice looks like. Okoro read the message twice. Then he looked at his staff and saw new hope in their eyes. We go to Vratheon Prime, he said. We end this. And we show the galaxy that evil does not get to win just because it is strong. Start preparing the fleet. We sail in 2 weeks. The long war was entering its final phase. Humanity had bled. Humanity had suffered. But humanity had not broken. And now humanity would strike the final blow. The Vratheon were about to learn what happened when you murdered the Friends of Earth. The armada that assembled at the edge of Vratheon space was the largest fleet humanity had ever created. 112 warships, every vessel that could fly and fight. 30,000 crew members. 200,000 Marines ready for boarding actions. Every ship carried weapons loaded. Crews at battle stations, final prayers said. Admiral James Okoro stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and felt the weight of what he was about to do. Behind him, Earth stood undefended. If this assault failed, the Vratheon would have an open path to humanity's homeworld. Everything depended on the next 24 hours. Sir, we are getting additional contacts, his sensor officer reported. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. They are not Vratheon. Okoro felt his heart skip. Friend or foe? Then the identification signals came through. Keltar ships, only a dozen of them, but crewed by survivors who had rebuilt from nothing, and others. Ships from the Trevelyan commonality, vessels from the Drell resistance, even a few small craft from species Okoro had never heard of. A message came through on all channels. Keeper Solus appeared on the screen, his ancient features somehow determined. We cannot officially join you, Admiral. Our governments forbid it, but we can volunteer as individuals. The galaxy has lived in fear long enough. What you do today, you do for all of us. Give them fire and steel. Okoro felt something warm in his chest. Hope. Humanity was not alone after all. The fleet had grown by 40 ships, a small number compared to what they faced, but the gesture mattered more than the numbers. All ships, Okoro transmitted. We go to end this. The Vratheon believe they are unstoppable. They believe genocide is just policy. Today we prove them wrong. For the Keltar. For every species they murdered. For every being they enslaved. Today we show them that evil has a price. All ships advance. The combined fleet jumped to FTL. When they emerged at Vratheon Prime, the battle began immediately. The Vratheon had known they were coming. 200 warships waited in defensive formations around their homeworld. Orbital fortresses, massive structures bristling with weapons hung in space like artificial moons. Planetary shields covered the major cities, glowing domes of energy that could withstand orbital bombardment. The Vratheon opened fire. The space around Vratheon Prime became a storm of energy and metal. Human ships scattered into their chaotic attack patterns. Railguns and plasma lances fired. Drones swarmed forward in clouds. Nuclear missiles detonated in brilliant flashes. Ships died on both sides. The human carrier Defiant was cut in half by a Vratheon beam. The Keltar frigate Remembrance was destroyed by missile fire. All hands lost. But for every human ship that fell, the fleet pushed forward. They had not come this far to fail now. Target the orbital fortresses, Okoro ordered. We need to clear a path to the surface. The heavy ships concentrated their fire on the nearest fortress. Railgun rounds hammered at shields. Plasma lances burned through armor. The fortress fought back, destroying 3 human destroyers, but it could not withstand the focused assault. Its shields failed. Its structure broke apart in a cascade of explosions. 1 fortress down. 5 more to go. Captain Maria Reeves, now commanding her own battleship, led an assault group against the second fortress. Her tactics were aggressive, almost reckless. She brought her ship close, taking terrible damage but delivering devastating firepower at point-blank range. The fortress fell, but Reeves's ship was crippled. She transferred her command to a destroyer and kept fighting. The battle raged for 6 hours. Ships maneuvered and died. Weapons fired until their barrels glowed. Crews worked past exhaustion, running on adrenaline and determination. Okoro's flagship took a direct hit from a Vratheon dreadnought. Half the bridge exploded. The admiral found himself thrown against a wall, his uniform burning. His executive officer was dead, along with most of the bridge crew. But the ship's engines still worked. The weapons still functioned. Transfer command to the secondary bridge, Okoro ordered, choking on smoke. Keep fighting. We are not done. He made his way through damaged corridors to reach the secondary command center. When he arrived, he found a young lieutenant in charge, a woman barely out of the academy. She saluted with shaking hands. Admiral, we have lost main engines. Weapons at 60%. The Vratheon are closing in. Okoro looked at the tactical display. The Vratheon were concentrating on the Indomitable, trying to kill the human fleet commander. Good. While they focused on him, the rest of the fleet could do its job. All power to weapons, Okoro ordered. If we are going to die, we die fighting. The Indomitable became a stationary gun platform, pouring fire into the approaching Vratheon ships. They hit her again and again. Compartments vented atmosphere. Systems failed. Crew members died at their posts. But the ship kept firing. Then reinforcements arrived. Captain Reeves brought her destroyer alongside, along with a dozen other ships. They formed a protective screen around the Indomitable, taking hits meant for the flagship. You are not dying today, Admiral, Reeves transmitted. We still need you. The battle's turning point came when Lieutenant Amanda Chen, leading a marine assault on the planetary surface, managed to sabotage one of the shield generators. The shields over the capital city flickered and failed. Human ships immediately began bombardment of military targets. Not civilian areas, never civilian areas, but command centers and military installations. The Vratheon leadership realized they were losing. Their impregnable defenses had been penetrated. Their fleet was being destroyed. For the first time in 300 years, the Vratheon faced defeat on their own homeworld. The Vratheon fleet commander broadcast a surrender request. Okoro almost rejected it, almost kept firing. The rage was still there, the memory of 8 million dead Keltar. But he forced himself to think, to remember what humanity was fighting for. Cease fire, he ordered. All ships, cease fire. Let us see if they mean it. The Vratheon did mean it. Their fleet powered down weapons. Their ground forces laid down arms. The battle for Vratheon Prime was over. Okoro brought his damaged flagship into orbit above the Vratheon capital. He had the city in his sights. One word and he could reduce it to ash, could make the Vratheon feel what the Keltar had felt. But he did not give that word. Instead, he broadcast a message to the entire Vratheon population. People of the Vratheon ascendancy, your military has surrendered. Your leaders chose to commit genocide against peaceful species. They chose to enslave others. They chose to make extinction their policy. For those crimes they will face justice. But you, the civilians, you have a choice. You can continue the path of genocide, or you can choose to live as members of the galactic community. We came with fire and steel because you left us no choice. But we are not you. We do not massacre civilians. We do not punish children for their parents' crimes. Choose better leaders. Choose a better path. Because if you ever commit genocide again, we will return. And next time we will not be so merciful. The war was over. It had cost humanity dearly. A quarter of the fleet was destroyed. 70,000 crew members dead. Colonies damaged. Resources exhausted. The rebuilding would take decades, but it was worth it. The Vratheon military command was brought before a galactic tribunal. The evidence of their crimes, documented by people like Amanda Chen and her mother before her, was overwhelming. They were found guilty. Their empire was dissolved. The Vratheon people were placed under supervision, required to pay reparations to surviving victims, and the slaves were freed. Millions of beings from a dozen species, liberated from Vratheon camps, the Drell regained their independence. Other extinct species had no homeworlds to return to, so humanity helped them establish new colonies. The Keltar were given a new world, a beautiful planet with waterfalls and forests. They named it New Varus in memory of what they had lost. Humans helped them build new cities. The two species, bonded by shared suffering and shared triumph, became closer than ever. 30 years later, Commander Sarah Chen stood at a memorial on Vera 7. The planet was empty now, preserved as a monument. 8 million names were carved into stone, 8 million lives that should not have been lost, but they had not died in vain. Sarah was old now, her hair white, her face lined, but her eyes were still sharp as she addressed the cadets who had come to the memorial. Young people from Earth and Keltar, from Drell and Trevelyan and a dozen other species, all training together in the new Galactic Defense Force. "You are too young to remember the war," Sarah said, "but you live in the galaxy the war created. Before humanity arrived, the galaxy was ruled by fear. The strong did what they wanted. The weak suffered in silence. That is changing now, because we showed them that evil has a price. Because we refused to look away from genocide." She paused, looking at the young faces before her. "Some people ask if it was worth it. 8 million Keltar dead, 70,000 humans dead, billions spent, years of war. Was it worth the cost?" And I tell them yes, because some things are worth fighting for. Some evils cannot be tolerated. We could have looked away. We could have let the Vratheon continue, but then we would have become something less than human. One of the cadets, a young Keltar woman, raised her hand. "Commander Chen, what do you want us to remember?" Sarah thought for a long moment. "Remember that we answered with fire and steel because no one else would.